Hi, this is a video for all the customers of IT for Business. I've been asked by a few of you to produce a video on things you need to worry about as the owner of a business. Actually, you could probably pass this on to anybody. It's just general good practice, good things to think about in terms of IT. So let's crack on. So firstly, we've got threats and vulnerabilities. Now, this isn't technical. This is just understanding risk. Now, what's the difference between threats and vulnerabilities? Well, imagine you live in a house on a tiny island 250 miles from anywhere else in the middle of the sea. Now, you hardly see one person from 1 month to the next. So the fact that your wall is completely crumbling away doesn't concern you very much, because you basically don't have any threats, even though you're very vulnerable because there's no wall. The wall is gone. Now compare that to someone who lives in the centre of London, perhaps Kensington or right next to Buckingham Palace. You have a wall that's 20 feet tall, immaculately maintained, but you have thousands and thousands of threats, people trying to get in and steal things. So you have a lot of threats to worry about, even though you don't think you're vulnerable. Okay, but those are two scenarios. And when it comes to IT, you need to think about, what do my people know about? Are there any practices we've got which are not great? Are we doing the latest? Have we got the latest protection in place? So that's threats and vulnerabilities. Now I want to dispel a myth. When people say to me, oh, I'm okay, I've got antivirus protection, I think it's, and then they name a particular product. Firstly, they never know if it's still working or not. Secondly, they don't know if it's any good or not. And thirdly, most threats these days aren't about what are called viruses, which are things that have to infect documents on your computer. I mean, they can be, but this is really old school stuff. You know, the latest people in security, they laugh out loud when they hear that people have only got antivirus protection. Let's put it this way. A Windows 10 machine with the out-of-the-box Microsoft kind of low-grade antivirus protection, if you plug it onto the internet direct, it will be infected in less than 10 minutes. So antivirus protection alone is almost worth nothing. Let's be clear on that point. Anyway, let's talk about stuff you do need to know about. So when a product gets shipped out the door, like the Apple software that you can't get, that comes on Apple Mac, or Windows, Microsoft Windows, or Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, all that kind of stuff. Anything you install on your local machine, it often ships and it's not quite perfectly tested. So there'll be little functions in there in the thousands of libraries that make up one piece of software. There'll be bits that have got problems in them that allow a malicious attacker to take control or overwrite things they're not supposed to see, or read things they're not supposed to see. And the manufacturers of all the software, the people who develop it, they're constantly releasing fixes, constantly. There are companies out there who alert them to these problems and say, you need to fix this, you need to fix this. Microsoft have a big Patch Tuesday every month, second Tuesday of the month, when they release really big fixes, but there's a constant drip feed of fixes. Now, are you going to try and stay on top of this yourself? I think that's a really, really hard thing to do. What's worse, it's about once every 18 months, a patch is released that cripples the system. By accident, the manufacturer has issued a duff patch. A lot better, just pay a very small amount to have all this managed, so that every single patch is pushed and guaranteed pushed, and check that it's been pushed by a third-party service. And they check every single patch, so the duff ones get caught before they get as far as you. That seems really logical. Make it an actively managed process. Next point, phishing protection. Now, this is the latest threat. Phishing is when somebody is trying to trick you into giving them your username and password. It is a massive threat, and people are so innocently naive about how it works. For example, well, let's move on to the next slide, actually, because that's to do with, we'll talk about phishing in a minute. Email cleaning. Nearly all threats come through email. It could be a Word document that's still got an old-fashioned virus on it. It could be a PDF with infected links. It could be just links in the email. It could be lots of things. It could be links to an infected website where the website will be infected in 24 hours. So your software, which might be checking to see if it's clean now, goes off and checks the website, says, oh, seems all right, I'll let this one through. 24 hours later, the website is then deliberately infected, and that's when users might click through to that website wondering, what's this about? And then they get phished. Okay, so phishing is where you click on a link thinking you're logging into a system, you're logging through a front door that looks just like the real thing, but it isn't. And you put in your login and your username, and then you get taken through to the real front, inside the house of the thing. Like if it's Facebook, you go through this Facebook-like front door, and it takes you straight to Facebook. On the way, they skimmed your username and the password. So phishing and scamming, these are so big. The latest ones are called smishing, which is SMS phishing, which is basically text messages. Oh, there's a parcel from Royal Mail. Please click here to confirm your details. Okay. Or your gas alert or payment required or whatever it is. If you weren't expecting it, don't deal with it. Don't open it. Don't do anything with it. And this is the message for your staff. Your people have to become aware of this kind of thing and automatically have a cynical part of their brain kicking in going, how do I trust this? The other big threat, ransomware. It's very easy to know when you've got ransomware because a big sign appears on your screen in red saying this is ransomware. You'll find your documents stop displaying a Word or an Excel or PDF icon. They all go white blank because they've just changed to be encrypted. And the ransomware attack will try to extort anything between 200 bitcoins, which is a lot of money now, to thousands and thousands of bitcoins. Even the big companies are being hit, but the little ones, they love them just as much. There's two ways to prevent a ransomware attack being successful. One, have great backups of all your data, really good backups. So you just wipe what's there, put it back from 10 minutes ago or half an hour ago or 6 hours ago, whatever, however frequently you take your backups, you just rewind the clock back to when stuff was okay. The second point is there is a brand new bit of software coming out which detects when massive encryption is starting to happen on your files and pounces in there and stops the process from doing it. That is brand new. That is really brand new, and it's going to come out in about the next month. And that is, I don't want to make a tasteless joke, but it is like the COVID cure. It is that significant for certainly Windows and Apple Mac computers. Finally, training for your staff. We're talking about your people here. I do my family. I make them watch these training videos every month. I make them think about the sort of don't use USB sticks that you don't know where they come from. Don't click on links. I make them go through this stuff, and they don't always pass. I mean, maybe in 6 months, we've had 2 failures on the fake phishing campaign. Well, after everything I've told them, they're still failing the tests. When I did a test with all my customers, or rather I did half my customers, half of their staff failed the phishing tests. That's 25% of all my customer staff failed the phishing tests. I was expecting maybe 10%. If you're the owner of a business, you're smart, you're switched on, you really know what you're doing, and you're sensitive and you spot things, but many staff just don't quite care as much as you do because it's not their business, and they're naive and they're very good at their job, but they're just not cynical enough. So training for staff is really important. Now, information. GDPR popped its head up about 3 years ago, getting to over 2 years ago, and there's a lot of legal stuff, but let's talk about the practicalities for businesses. You now have to be responsible for information that you never were before. You need to look at information and decide whether you need to keep it and how to protect it. But let's talk about the keeping it bit. It's your rules, but you have to have them and you have to show that you've got them, whatever business you're in. So you might say, I'm going to keep my customer information for 3 years. Okay, if I would do a job for a customer, so maybe I put in a fence post in the garden. That's it. Simple job. I'll keep that customer's details for 3 years. If I haven't heard from them in 3 years, I've decided I'm going to delete them from my systems, and I have a process for doing that. It might be that you say 7 years because your regulator, financial regulator perhaps, demands that you keep it for 7 years, no matter what. Fine, it's easy. Decision is made for you. I will keep for my business information for 7 years because my regulator tells me I must. Fine. And here is my process, annual review, for removing data I should no longer have. But there's a third example, which is arguably an electrician, for example, which has a perfectly good case for saying, I will keep customer data for 30 years because under the grounds of health and safety, if a customer phoned me up and said, we're really worried we're about to electrocute ourselves if we drill through this wall, you did a job for us 20 years ago, we want to know if it's safe. You could argue that if you kept the drawings of their house, the electrical drawings, you could then say to them, don't drill there, that's a dangerous place to drill. Okay. The overall point here is that you are in charge of deciding the rules that you're going to follow, but you must have some. Okay. In any business, you must have some rules drawn up. If you get inspected and you can't produce any evidence of having thought about any of this, you fail. Okay. And you get punished. Now, logging in. Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication is basically the idea that when you log in, you have a username, which sometimes is your email address, sometimes isn't. It's a coincidence if it is, but it's easy to remember. But you also have a password and another thing as well as the password. Usually it's a 6-digit code. 6-digit code, you either get it off your phone because it's a text message, or there's a little app. I use the one called Authy. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, there, little red one, Authy. It's really good. It works with Microsoft, works with Google, works with any of them. Now, there's a spin-off from here, because if you now have two-factor authentication turned on for all your applications access everywhere, which is what you need to do, painful though it is, because it stops attackers absolutely dead in their tracks. They cannot proceed without the code from your phone. That's it. End of. They'll move on to somebody else. If you do that and you turn it on, you can no longer just borrow someone else's account. Now, for decades, I've walked into people's offices and there on the corner of the screen is a little yellow sticky note. And if I look closely, it nearly always is a username and a password for that occasionally used system, whatever it is, the holiday records form or the staff checklist training system that people only go into once a month. And Frida's on holiday this month, so somebody else has got a cover for her. Well, in the old days, they could just log in as her, but now they can't. So the corollary here is you now have to know every single online system your business is using. And you have to know who's the administrator, who's the main person in your business who can organize other logins. And you need to know who the other logins are. This is not a bad thing to do. You might have an IT department, you might not have an IT department at all. Anyone in the IT department, they can't possibly know which web applications you've been logging into. Only you and your team can know this. But now you have to be on top of it. Okay, well, that's my point about knowing your IT systems for the first time. Okay, now most of what I've been saying is pretty doom and gloom, dull / scary, hairy, scary stuff. I actually quite like making IT do something good for the business. So, for example, one of the things I really like doing was setting up a questionnaire thing, which comes free as part of Microsoft 365. I really like the way all your voice, your voice calls in and outbound are wrapped up inside Microsoft Teams. It really dovetails really well with all the other information about your clients and your contacts within Teams. It even does voice transcription. So when someone leaves you an answer phone, you get an email with the audio file attached of the message, but also the words have been transcribed for you. I mean, this kind of stuff's just really, really clever. But also I've been doing some policies and procedures relating to IT. Now, in some businesses, you don't have to have all this stuff yet, but it's coming. And if you're in a regulated business, you absolutely have to have it. And what we're talking about is IT policies for various different things, how we manage access to our systems, how often we do training, an equipment register of all the bits and pieces we've given out to staff. All this stuff you got to have. And you've got to have not just a policy saying this is how we want to do it. You have to have the procedure defining exactly how you do it. And sometimes you have to have a little database information thing to support the information. And I'm into doing all of that at the moment. And it's quite satisfying. But most businesses either need it or would like to have it. Next point is, okay, that's the same. The information tools you can build within a part of Microsoft 365, which is free, which is called SharePoint or Teams, again, part of Teams. And there's a bit where you can build your own little mobile apps off the back of it. And that's free as well. It's really, really powerful. That bit's called Power Apps. There are so many bits in Microsoft Office that people don't know about. So many bits. Finally, the thing I like to do with a business is not just treat IT as a thing, but the kind of the lifeblood or the plumbing or the information flow within other departments. So I often work with the marketing department, the finance department, the personnel department, and talk about what is it they're trying to do, what are they trying to achieve, and then I can figure out what IT tools need to go in place to make that better, work more efficiently. So that's kind of a load of stuff this month about what you need to worry about from an IT perspective. General background to IT for business. I mean, I set it up as someone to call 24/7, if that's what you want, where the phone will be answered in 2 minutes. But also someone to sit your side of the table when you're dealing with other IT providers. So I often sit around your side and talk to the web developer and then the email hosting company, and I'll talk to the IT support company, and I'll just advise you on how you can work with them. But if you haven't got any of them and I'm providing them, well, I'm doing the whole thing. By the way, someone to call 24/7 is basically a company that I work with, which have 1,500 staff. They're in Malaysia, they're in Canada, the United States. They'll always be able to pick up the phone, always, because there's so many of them, whenever you like. In the nicest possible way, I'll do my best to answer the phone whenever you call me, but I will be asleep sometimes. So, and they won't. They'll always be there to answer the call. I tried to make my explanations as simple as possible. I hope I've hardly mentioned anything technical in this video. You can send me answers on a postcard if you've spotted me saying something that's too complicated, but I try to keep it pretty simple. I'm constantly watching the marketplace for what's around the corner, what's new. I'm constantly doing training. The latest thing is this ransomware protection. For the first time I've ever come across where there's a sort of direct shield against a ransomware attack at a technical level, not just a people level. And then the pricing, well, I mean, I tried to set it up at a price that most SMEs can handle. I mean, if you take all the security services, and I really wish you would, then the bundle price is like £45 plus VAT per month per machine. But it's kind of per machine, per user, because some things are done at a per user level, like email cleaning. Some things are done at a person level, like phishing protection on the machine. But it's roughly £45 per user / machine per month. And it's basically enterprise grade for SMEs. So there we go. That's the roundup for April. We've covered security, we've covered efficiencies, we've covered training your staff, we've covered loads of stuff. If you've got any more queries, then drop me a line, alex@itforbusinessuk.com or support@itforbusinessuk.com, and look me up on LinkedIn. Okay, thanks for watching.